this mute button, this happened to me. I think it's something to do with Sam on the show because it's the second time he's done this to me, where I've started the show muted. This happened last time you were here too, right?
Yes.
Why is it with you and I mute intros? You can hear the all. I was getting better at that. Diuba, right? Did I say it right?
Jiuba.
Yeah. See, I'm getting even. I had a flawless intro that was spoiled by a mute. Oh, see, that's what happens, boys, when you're not prepared or you're just illiterate. I'm just kidding, guys. But I'm back with my friends, Cortex Zero, and today, the man who was on last week, who was instrumental in releasing the Uba Prophecy, the Golden Planet, originally titled Abduction to the Ninth Planet. And this was from Michael Demarque originally. You helped translate it, get it over to the Chinese market, Taiwanese market. There it became a bestseller and is still going strong. You sent me a copy. Man, I love it. I'm not usually a big abduction story guy. There, that's my line in the sand, if you will, right? But this seems different than your typical story of just taking someone and scooping their DNA. So it's a much better read than your standard abduction story. How's everyone doing? We're coming off the wake of what I would say was a 2 week flap of just nonsense. Absolute nonsense between the United States government. Honestly, let's just say governments and their people. There's a big talk about national security and defending our own airspace, wherever that may be, right? And that got me thinking, if this continues down the path that I think it's going to go down, are we going to see actual UAP get shot down, or at least attempt to shoot down? And where could that lead us? Could it lead us down a path of destruction where we don't end up going anywhere because we shoot first and ask questions later? But before we get into all that, guys, make sure to like, share, subscribe. Samuel, I just want to say how you doing, and if you could introduce yourself, maybe give us a little background that I didn't get to.
Great. And nice to be here again. And my name is Samuel Zhao, and I'm a certified court interpreter and a Chinese translator here in Los Angeles. I have a fascination about space and the paranormal, aside from my daytime job working with attorneys and doctors. So I think it's a very interesting time that we are here, and we just have to respond to our challenges in life, and also to learn as much as we can, especially the spiritual lessons.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I couldn't agree more. In this book, I'm only on page like 20 something. Trying to read it on the go, but so far it's struck many chords of mine that, like, philosophically, that I have, right? Because we're not, people always tend to forget that I don't just talk about UFOs and um the stuff that's in the news, right? Like the mainstream, garbage. It's honestly, it's more about getting to those, peeling the onion back and getting to those questions, like what happens after we die, right? Um, why are we here? What is our purpose? What's my purpose? What's my place in the world, in the universe? What does it all mean? These are questions I think everybody has, but maybe we've been groomed to not ask out loud, right? So I think this book could help. Maybe not just this book, but I think this book, and this conversation could really open up people to that question, in a way that's not as frightening, right?
And there is reincarnation for sure. And the author Michel Demarque was shown his past lives, and we just constantly evolve through different lifetimes and constantly learning and relearning and responding to the situations that we all face. And the more challenged the environment that we live in, the more we learn. So we have to take our lifetimes very seriously, and as a very good opportunity to progress.
Yeah, I agree. This is, but specifically this moment that we find ourselves in right now, is going to be critical. Do we allow Congress to, sit behind closed doors and hash this out by themselves, or do we stand up and say, we want to be a part of this, because you can't shoot shit out of the sky without having a conversation with us. Like, it's not going to work that way. And I think not enough people are saying, hey, because this doesn't just affect, the current news. This affects, what if the craft that came to get Michael that day was chased down by, F-22s and shot at? Who's to say we're capable of even keeping up with something like that, keeping up with anything? But I got to ask the question, is this going to hinder us as a society?
Yeah.
So those are all questions I'd like to get into and talk about. But Tom, what's going on, brother?
Ty, Samuel, it's a pleasure to be here. Long week, man. Long
Yeah.
week.
I kind of feel a little deflated.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, balloons. Like.
So
yeah.
I mean,
I feel the same way, man. I woke up this morning and was so cranky.
In Congress, because Congress had a closed door meeting basically, and Marco Rubio, some of the other people that came out of this meeting, seemed a little shaken about something, and
I had read that earlier. Now, I'm not going to lie, because I do this every now and then. Like from yesterday into today, I unplugged a little bit. I just took time to myself, meditated, played my guitar, tweeted like once, but I saw on Reddit earlier today that there was some sort of meeting, and I forget the representative's name, but it said something along the lines of, I came out with more questions than I started.
Yeah, that's probably Kennedy.
I believe you are correct. And the more information comes out, like, I had everybody when you and I were last live together temper their expectations. Like, hey, we have no idea what these objects are. Let's not jump to conclusions, but there's been like little bits of information trickling out that's leading me to think that now there is a possibility at least one of these was something strange. I have to admit that is where I'm at right now. I will say that.
I'd say 1 out of the 4.
Yes, I agree with that.
And it's that last one, the one where it disappeared off radar.
Yep.
Came back, and and it was shaped octagon. I can't say the word. It was
octagonal.
Octagonal. It was 8-sided, and that one caught my attention because that was one of the ones where we heard things that we normally hear in a sighting or a spotting like this with radar, where it's there, then it's gone, and then you're getting a return. You go out there, you don't see anything. You come back, then it's back again. These are kind of playing games with them a little bit. That's what it seemed like. So, I mean, all that said, it has been a crazy week for UAPs are trending every single day. UFO Twitter is trending. So people's interest has been sparked on this topic. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit of the obscure and not obscure when it comes to all this, because there's one thing about shooting a balloon down, but there's a whole nother thing when a craft entered our airspace. Are we going to shoot at it? Is that the new policy? Is that it? And where could this lead us? Because it seems to be a very aggressive stance, if you will.
Yeah, like very
really aggressive
out of nowhere,
attitude.
like overnight.
So, Samuel, did you expect anything like this? I mean, China was also reporting a UAP and that they were going to shoot it down.
Yeah.
Do you think they just got in on that because it was like a counter tactic, or do you think they actually had something over the country?
I think given the fact that the Chinese Communist Party in the past used a lot of counter tactics just to initiate wars against the people and also against other nations, I think it's very likely to be a counter tactic by the Chinese Communist Party. But there's no doubt that there are going to be UAPs or UFOs in the sky.
I know
the governments.
And I know this conversation isn't it's not as wild as we can get into with all the stories, but because you're from you know that market and that country intimately, I figured you may have a good insight.
Yes, and but I don't rule out that there are real UFOs, UAPs from from extraterrestrials that are coming here and visiting us, and the governments in the world are going to use those as some of the false flag operations and to target them and to turn out our attentions to those kind of ETs that have no intentions of invading us, because if they really wanted to, they would have done that long time ago, thousands of years ago. So I think if they are able here, they must have evolved spiritually to a level that they really want to help us to evolve together and not to invade us. But I want to mention that China is we have to separate the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party, the government.
Of course.
Agreed.
And the Chinese government has been trying really hard to cause a lot of turmoil in the world. Not only what happened 3 years ago in Wuhan, but also right now using very inexpensive balloons to make the U.S. government, also Taiwanese and Japanese governments, to really spend a lot of money by launching missiles and to take them down. A balloon in China costs only about a few hundred US$, but if you are to use a missile or something to take it down, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
Right. That's actually a good point. That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
How much money NATO, by the way, NATO has never run an active military operation over North America, and in one weekend or one week 4 times. Like, we have to address, of course, that's going to be an issue, right? But why? People aren't asking the question why. Why
Right.
4 in less than a week? Why? It seems odd.
It does seem odd. It seems staged on some level. Like there's not that they sent up the objects and then shot them down and are making a thing of it, but it's just like it's almost like they maybe saw that it fit into a plan that was already in place, and they're like, "Hey guys, opportunity! Boom, let's go, let's do it right
that's
now."
What I'm worried about, and
Yeah,
that's
I am
why
too, though.
That's why I brought Sam in as well, because him and I spoke about the false flag operation, and could this be a beginning of the last card being played, the final card, right?
Which really gives credence to a lot of things that Greer has talked about.
I know, and I know, I hate to admit that,
but the thing with that is that we can't stray away. Like if he can be a grifter and still be right on some level, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, people can be greedy, yeah, and incorrect. And
it's possible that he may have been, honest this entire time, and it's just been like, a defamation campaign against him. I mean, I don't personally feel that way. I think he's kind of gone down a darker path, but you still have to leave that open as a possibility.
So what are the repercussions, or what are the, let's call it, what are the hallmarks of a false, this typical, not typical, this is not typical. What would be the hallmarks of the false flag operation, Sam? Like what things do people have to look out for? Or is it things like this? Where
when the wars stopped between Russia and Ukraine, when the war stops between China and Taiwan, then that's when the false flag operations are going to start, because it's the military-industrial complex that's going to have to make money. And they can make money from the wars. As long as the wars go on, they're okay. But as long as we are living in a peaceful time, they're going to make something happen.
That's a good, I didn't even, this whole, there's another whole side of this where there's a lot that could be in the news right now. There's a lot of things that could be front page headlines.
Ohio.
And they're taking back seats to this whole thing.
There's rain coming our way that could be potentially dangerous. I had multiple people literally warning me today. I have a friend that lives in Virginia, and they were told to stay indoors, like while this rain
Yeah,
passes.
How is
wind
that
and not major news? Like, typically speaking, that doesn't happen ever. So usually when something doesn't happen ever, it's news. It's like the 24-hour news cycle is like overcrowded with things that we're not even used to begin with. And the fact that CNN said, oh, no visible propulsion. It's just like I'm seeing things that I've just never seen before, regardless of what
Jeffrey
these
Epstein list comes out today. Like,
yeah, I heard that
there's
too.
so much stuff that's like, you just kind of look around. It's like, listen, I'm not conspiratorial, but
Yeah, we are.
maybe someone was trying to make us look a different way. Like, here, take a look at left hand. So
There's
I
a
can
lot of
sneak
people
by.
that are saying that. There's a lot of, for lack of a better term, talking heads and pundits, especially like in the alternative news media, independent news media, that are posting memes or, there's something going on over here and it's like a political cartoon. And then over here, everyone's staring at like a shiny flying saucer. But what irks me about that is that people will look at that and they take that to mean UFOs are nonsense all the way through. It's like, no. This may just be them using something that really is out there because the
it's a
evidence
2 for
adds
1.
up. Right, exactly.
It's 2 for 1, right?
I wanted to ask
shit.
Samuel about that. Like,
Yeah, you get to shit on the UAP topic and still play your sleight hand.
right. How did the public perceive the greater UFO phenomenon in China? Is there a high percentage of people that believe like we do in the United States, or is it different?
It used to be like 10 or maybe 20 years ago, people used to believe like what the people in the US believe now. But over the last 20 years or so, most of the people in China have been brainwashed heavily by the Chinese government. So they no longer have independent thoughts. They're no longer able to think independently because they get pushed. They get fed by the news. They don't search anymore. A lot of people don't know how to do search anymore.
And do you think, not to butt in, but do you think at the advent of, not the advent, but do you think them controlling the media is a big part of that?
I think so, and I think this is a very serious problem for people in China.
It's also here we're seeing it happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
The start of it. The start of what looks like, because if you think about it, there's just, right, like, there's so much reliance. You see what happens on a balloon getting shot down, right? So I come out, I'm from the Pentagon, and I say, we've shot down a UAP. We don't know what it is, don't know the shape, and I spit out a headline. Now CNN takes that, turns it into a headline, and it just gets repeated over and over and over and over again, right? It's just a machine. It's just a cycle.
Headline is the story.
Yeah. The headline becomes a story. No one's reading the actual context.
Correct.
They're taking it on what the White House says or the Pentagon says, because the Pentagon says that they're a reliable source. We know that because they're the government. And it's like, well, no, the government's actually not a source. They're what's the other word? They're the story usually. They're not the source. If I went to Samuel and he worked for the government and then was telling me something about that, right? Samuel is the source. The government is the story, right? Does that make sense? I can't.
No, I get what you're saying.
But we used to rely
like
on
virus.
That. We used to rely on sourced journalism. Right?
Yes, it used to be just about news, and now it has to be 24-hour news cycle. But you add in opinionated material. That's all it is now. If you turn on CNN, for example, at like 11 o'clock at night, I always see there's like 6 squares with a different person in it, and they're all talking at the same time, trying to argue over each other, and I'm like, this isn't news. This is just a bunch of. It's like a bad podcast. It'd be like our 3 squares here, times 2, and everyone's talking at once, and everyone's got a vein in their forehead about how angry they are at so and so, and it's just like what CNN used to me, and again, I don't want to go too far down that hole, but like them and a lot of other news networks, especially them though, like back when I was a kid, CNN was very well respected. I trusted CNN. Now I don't know who to trust, and I'm not some like loopy conspiracy theorist that believes everything I hear, like, oh, lizards have taken over the government. Like, it's just that there's so much disinformation out there coming from left, right, up, down. I don't know what to believe sometimes.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and I'm sure it's like that in China.
Yeah, so help us understand this a little bit more.
So in China, the government controls the media, and they have done that in the last 7 decades or so. So people don't really have the ability to think anymore. In the U.S., about 5 or 6 families control the media, or the mainstream media.
Very
So
well
the
said.
situation is a little bit better, but not too much better compared to China. So I think it's especially dangerous, especially when someone like Anthony Fauci, who is extremely articulate and who extremely authoritative figure in the government, to what he has to say, conducts certain information or conveys certain information that may not necessarily be true. That's the most dangerous thing. Remember, 400 years ago, we believed that Earth was the center of the universe, at least among the Catholic Church people. I mean, like they didn't look at the facts. And I just suggest people to look at the facts and to use their own independent research and investigation abilities to really find out whether what the government is saying is true or not. And do we really need to believe what the government says or the mainstream media says? I really think it's time to wake up. I mean, why this book is so important, Theobald Prophecy, is that it really requests or asks the reader to wake up and to really look at what's happening around us and to see what's really going on. The politicians, according to the book, are just puppets being pulled by a small group of financiers running everything behind the scenes. So they're just being manipulated by the small group of small interest groups, small number of people who are special interest groups, and it's if you look at everything, if you look at what's happening, especially in the last few decades, everything has been revolved around money. A lot of the very good cures of certain diseases have been suppressed by the mainstream media. For example, cancer is one of them, and people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for treatment of cancer,
Yeah.
when in fact certain naturopathic or natural medicines that they are able to really do a better job at treating cancer or curing cancer for that matter.
Preach.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean,
You have like I have to commend you for a second. I don't mean to interrupt you, Ty. In our day and age right now, it takes courage to say something like that online. And I like my father is a type 2 diabetic, and I've had talks with him before. We look at the prices of insulin,
I was just going to
what
say
he
that.
has to go through. And and my dad has said to me a couple times in my life, he's like, really wouldn't surprise me if they had this figured out a long time ago. And they don't look at me as a patient, they look at me as a customer. That always scared the hell out of me, that they
I
would
mean,
have the power to do
because
that.
everyone thinks, oh God, the medical community, they're only in it for our health. It's like, well, let
You
me
can put
remind you who's
water-
responsible for the fentanyl epidemic.
Yeah, that killed my best friend.
Yeah, let me remind you why everyone's hooked on opiates. Why everyone went down the path of heroin, because it was not the doctor. It wasn't just the doctors. It was the medicine being pushed on doctors and being told that it was non-addictive. That was the original spew. Was oxy. Oxys were not addictive.
And where does fentanyl come from, Ty?
What do you mean?
Where do you think the fentanyl is getting shipped from into this country primarily?
I mean, I know. So heroin and I guess fentanyl, maybe because it's derived from the same.
Samuel
thing.
knows. I can see it on his face.
Okay, go ahead.
China.
Is it China?
China.
And also the government, the 3-letter government agencies are involved as well.
Oh, they're absolutely making a buck off of it. Back when I started my YouTube channel in 2016, there was a raid on the Mexico-Texas border that they found enough fentanyl to kill every person in this country. That is a weapon of mass destruction. What if that ends up in the water supply?
Yeah. You can kill.
But you didn't hear much about it.
No.
And 2 points. This is why taking down the Chinese Communist Party is very important, because doing a lot of damage to the people in China and also people in the world.
But
And
do you think
second
we could do
point,
that without starting World War III?
It would
I
be
think it's
tough.
doable. It's doable.
Okay.
People are trying to do that right now, and some of the people in the U.S. and also in people in China. And
They
the
have to
second point,
go.
yeah, they have to go. Yes. And the second point is that back to your point about diabetes and cancer, if people really want to know how to help friends and family members, get the book Anthony Williams' Medical Medium, and you're going to find out how to really treat or cure cancer or diabetes or heart diseases using just natural like foods, like change your diet. And actually, for diabetes, the key is to relieve the pressure that we cause on the liver. It's really not about like not eating foods that are sweet. It's really about the liver. Get your liver healthy, and you're going to recover from diabetes or type 2 diabetes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I know personally from having Crohn's that there's no cure for it, but the nutritionists always speak about how your diet is the most important thing in and I think that could be said about everything. And look at our even I know that cancer's just popped up because of inflation and population and all that, but look at our ancestors. They didn't have to worry about cancer and all that. Well, they did, but it wasn't as rampant as it is now. And if it was, it would have wiped through them all. But how did they I always ask the question, how did they get by for so long when the medicine that we have now is only so good, right?
Lack of processed foods.
Yeah, it was just a
part of
different.
it.
Yeah, it's just a
They were eating much
different.
more natural back then. And if you look on a graph, I saw this the other day on Twitter. There's a graph that shows on a timeline, so I believe it's starting from like 1900 to now, and the spike in cancer that you see correlates with a spike in the production of like super processed foods. So it's just kind of like ding, 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 ding. It's right there. It's a massive part of it. Like the food that we eat is essentially killing us slowly.
Yeah.
On that point, I know some people can see auras or human energy fields, and they tell me that foods that are organic have stronger energy fields compared to foods that are genetically modified or foods that are grown from fertilizers.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to go to the farmer's market and to eat natural foods.
There's also this right now this is actually kind of going through. It started with one person on, I can't remember if it was TikTok, might have been TikTok, but she practices CE5. So, human initiated contact. And she said that her contact is much stronger and there's a better connection now that she is like not eating meat and I can't remember if she was vegan or vegetarian. It was one of those. But she said that it's her contact's been much stronger. So, could that be hindering us in ways that we don't even know? Could our diet be hindering our abilities in ways we don't even understand?
Yes, I believe that to be true. I don't think it's meat though. It's the fact that when you go get meat, good luck getting meat that isn't heavily processed. Like I feel like if you went out and killed your own boar or cow, and did that all yourself like a butcher would, depending on what they ate, of course, I think you would probably be fine. Again, I've even heard that like the Native Americans, when they smoked tobacco back in the day, that like it was so much more pure that it wasn't really good for you, but it wasn't nearly as bad because it didn't contain all those carcinogens that are in like, your cigarette filter. So
exactly, I totally agree. Yeah,
definitely part of it.
Yeah,
right. So, I mean, let's veer a little bit back in. Where do we sit right now in this prophecy? Right. This book is talking about something. I mean, it's talking about how the future unfolds in kind of a obscure way. So where are we on that timeline?
In that sense, we are actually, the book is actually a misnomer because it doesn't really give a prophecy, because the book says the future depends on our actions. So it really depends on how we respond to the current situations. And this is why the book is so important. It gives us a very interesting direction on where to go, which is the path of spirituality, how we respond to some of the things that we see nowadays, how we treat each other. It's just like following the teachings of Jesus Christ. I don't mean follow the Bible or religious leaders. I mean follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, the red letters in the New Testaments in the Bible. Exactly, just to really focus on love and spirituality, and that's the way to go. But we also need to have knowledge about certain things, such as how to maintain our health in a very positive manner, and knowledge about how to use clean energy. For example, I don't know if I mentioned last time, but Stanley Meyer invented a car that ran on water about 3 years
I know
ago.
about this. Yep.
Yeah, so that's something that was suppressed by the special interest groups, like big oil companies. A lot of other inventors have come up with the same thing, using like a specific
Sorry.
vibrational frequency to break the covalent bond between oxygen and hydrogen atoms in water molecules, so that the hydrogen atoms could be used as an energy source, a clean energy source. So I think people need to wake up and to really know about this.
So what you're alluding to is, well, what you allude to is that there is no correct path necessarily. It is a combination of choices. So there's not just one red pill, it's a series of red pills that we need to take in order to get to the end destination.
It requires our collective consciousness, our collective actions, concerted actions. And it also requires like raising up our spiritual development to a level that everyone understands, everyone acts together in a concerted fashion. And this is something that people that have been trying to do, just to find ways to make people aware of this. Because everyone is important. Everyone takes action. If everyone takes action, then the world is going to change. It doesn't come from the politicians. It comes from the people.
Right.
I love everything he's saying right now.
Right.
Like this really resonates with me so deeply.
And
it's like spirituality too. It's not hard, right? Like to
there
me,
has
all
been an uptick
spirituality
in
is it's just
spirituality.
it's going within and learning about yourself and learning to love other people despite your differences. Like that's how I always looked at it. Go outside, take your shoes off, walk around in the grass, put your phone away, and just like look around, look at the trees, look at the clouds, like just feel where you are. And you'll feel a connection. I'm telling you, you just have to open yourself up to it and you will feel that energy beneath your feet. It's happened to me. And I wasn't always like that.
There's a funny story about the lily, the flowers in California. There's a town in California that if there's really heavy rain throughout the winter and the bloom happens perfectly, the desert gets coated in this very beautiful orange and purple and these wildflowers. And when that happened a couple of years ago, thousands of people rolled into this town that did not have the ability to handle it. And the people that traveled out to bask in that beauty destroyed that beauty. Right, all of them going in there, they were all taking videos and doing all those model things and the Instagram pictures, and they trampled all of it, and like they just caused havoc into this town, right? So it's we have this problem right now. I guess what I'm getting at is like we want to capture beauty in nature, but we want to do it for the internet, like so we can post it on Instagram and whatever. Like it's a miscued development between spirituality and technology.
Yes, great point.
One should be used to amplify the other, not just, it's not, you get what I mean?
Yeah, it's there's a good way to go out there and take a photo of something and share it with other people. It's okay to share
Well, just the
beauty, but that's
ironic part of that
so
story
ironic
is
though.
that they
That's
went
like,
out to capture all this beauty on film, but thus in doing so trampled all the flowers. Like, trash was everywhere.
yeah, it's perfect.
Like,
It's like a parable. It like a
yeah,
modern parable.
it looked like a carnival after they left.
Oh,
People just throw their shit anywhere and everywhere. I can only imagine how many people went to the bathroom out there.
I hate
So
littering.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
disgusting.
it made me laugh because it's like the irony, and it's
It
like,
makes so
oh
much sense though.
God.
That is like literally such a perfect comparison. Like that's so valid. If you think about it, you go out to see something beautiful. Like when you leave, it should be beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Like it should, unless it disappears on its own because nature. But oh God, it's like what technology can do so many wonderful things for us. And I find it interesting that there have been these incidents, which Samuel, I'm sure you're aware of this, where especially at schools, like you have all these children, they're out on a playground, a craft comes down, beings come out, and there's been these warnings about technology that technology
Right.
can be dangerous. And it's like, I mean, we're seeing it. In my opinion, we are moving way faster towards creating, maybe a sentient machine or something that is a little bit more powerful than we are ready to handle. And we are hurtling towards it at a million miles an hour. I mean, I use Midjourney, I use Chat GPT just as like an experiment. Just imagine just 5 years from now where we're going to be as far as artificial intelligence. I mean, as good as that can be, I feel like it is the sharpest double-edged sword that humanity has ever created. And I'm curious, how do you feel about where we're headed technologically speaking and what these beings have warned experiencers about that technology in the future?
I was just going to use the word the double-edged sword, because technology, it is really dangerous if it leads us to a more materialistic world rather than a spiritual world. Because technology can help us for spiritual growth. For example, if we develop like our camera, it's going to help us to move more towards spirituality or spiritual growth, because you can tell whether a person is spiritual or not, whether a person has evil intentions or not, whether a person has some kind of physical illness or not. On the other hand, if technology such as the AI leads us to a more materialistic world in which we want to get more money or wealth, then we are going to create a lot of envy, hatred, and also wars. So this is a very dangerous path. It really depends how we use technologies, and how we use that wisely. And I think right now, a lot of people are not aware of the dangerous path that we are on right now. We have
Well,
to mend our ways.
a lot of people talk about this, right? In a general sense, they say we need to wake up, we need to evolve, we need to do this right. What does it look like for us all to do that, right? What are the steps that we need to take to get the message out? To how much? What percentage of the world does it take to make a difference?
1%.
Because that this is going to be crucial. And it scares me that thinking about we have to get the whole world on our backs on this. Is it even possible to have everyone agreeing, at least agreeing to have a conversation? I just so is it even attainable?
It is attainable. As if you read the book further down, you're going to see that there was an example on different planet in which a country was under a totalitarian regime. It only took 4 people who peacefully protested in front of the government building, that changed the entire country to a country of democracy, a country of the people who focus on spiritual growth. Even though the 4 people died, the entire country was saved. So I think same thing can happen on Earth here. It just takes people's awareness and consciousness. So this is why I've been so focusing on spreading the messages in the book. I've been contacting a lot of YouTubers and podcasters like you and try to get the message out, and I need people's help, and let's do it
Yeah,
together.
I'll give you credit for that. You're definitely doing the legwork, and I do commend it, right? Because I see all the work that you put into this book that you technically was written by someone else, and you've championed it for how many years have you been has this been happening?
I only appeared publicly since last June, but I've been working behind everything in the last 2 or 3 years or so, trying to get the words out. I'm still working on that, and I think there are a lot of room for growth, at least for all of us.
Yes, yeah, and that comes with time and practice, I suppose. But if someone asked you what this all means, what it all means, what would you begin to say to that person? Because I think that's a question we all have is in this life. There's a couple of questions that we all have, core questions. What happens after we die? What does it all mean? And are we alone? Because the book speaks about many of those philosophical questions.
Yes. So just to me personally, promoting the messages in the book means changing the path of the future, because I know something that the author, Michelle Desmarquet, was not allowed to write in the book. That's the entire motivation of me working so hard without any monetary return, just to spread the messages out. And actually, the meaning of life is a more profound question. It's actually like a learning environment that we are in, and we just to learn spiritual lessons one after another. It's just like a wheel. Through each reincarnation, we learn different lessons. So what goes up has to come down. So we experience all different lifetimes. We experience all the different challenges. We may be like a king or a queen in one lifetime, and then we become like a miner, a working miner in a mine in another lifetime. We may become like a few times like beggars on a street in different lifetimes. So each lifetime we learn different lessons. And then what happens is that after we die, our astral body leaves the physical body. So we kind of separate from our physical body, and there's a life reveal process in which everything we did in our lifetime is revealed to us in a holographic form. So, for example, if I hit another person, I would be able to feel how the other person felt after I hit that person. So it's more like a holographic experience.
I'm not looking forward to that process.
I've heard about this a lot reading.
Yeah, I'm definitely not looking forward to going through that.
That life review, which is apparently to those that have had near-death experiences, and someone close to my family actually had one. They said it was very powerful, but they came out of it looking at everybody differently, and now they kind of look like, well, if I walk up and I hurt somebody, I have essentially hurt myself. That's the message.
Yeah, and it's funny is I just started watching that show, Surviving Death.
Oh, good
book. Yeah, yep. I'm not a big Leslie Kean fan, but she also has that new show that's out on the other channel, National Geographic. It's on Hulu now. UFOs investigating the unknown. They're not talking about anything new, but it's presented in a nice way, and I think that's what's key here, Sam, is presenting the story in a way that's packed. It's easy to digest, because this is even the title of it's hard to say for American people like me, right? Take me as a case study. So I guess that is going to be because this is how it came out in the Chinese market as well, right?
Yeah, the title is actually Jehovah Prophecy, which is similar to the word Jehovah. Originally, the author wanted to make the title The Golden Planet.
See, that's an American title, digestible,
very American,
and they can pronounce it.
Okay,
I promise.
That's true. The Golden Planet. Yeah, that's it. Sounds like the name of like a comic book. You know what I mean? Like it's got that 3-word. It's boom, boom, boom. Like slips off the tongue real nice. Like it sounds epic,
Yeah,
which makes it
sounds like
readable.
an epic.
Right, exactly. And it's like, you know, someone's interpretation of it, reading a book, judging a book by its cover aside, like as long as it pulls them in, they may discover something like, truly extraordinary within the pages. When being initially drawn in, maybe having a different opinion, they may come out of it feeling completely different, but you still got them to read it.
The cover may be changed and the title may be amended to The Golden Planet, depending on how we market the book. I think when we put it on the mainstream media or something like that, we maybe change it to The Golden Planet.
Yes, just simple, because again, you have to remember the American market is very, very, very instant gratification. If it's something that they have to think about, and like that, the Uba part, that's what's going to throw them off. And I just know, because it's, for me, it's hard to say, so I don't even want to try, because I don't want to look like an asshole, in this day and age. But again, I think this book is super, super. So far, it's hit all the beats that I was looking for, because I am, abductions. I want to talk about that. Abductions. Why does that word carry such baggage? Because by all intents of purposes, it doesn't sound like an abduction, right, is like a kidnap. It sounds, people associate it with kidnapping. You're taken against your will, right?
Mhm.
So, but when in this scenario, should we be using that word? Is it, or does it have unneeded baggage behind it?
Well, I think it's a very good suggestion. I'm actually thinking about rebranding the book, taking the word abduction out and then taking the word Theoba prophecy out, just to leave it as the Golden Planet and change the cover to a more appealing one. And I think we can rebrand it.
Well, it's not even, you don't, that part aside, we talk, like, everyday people talk about abductions, right?
Mhm.
And typical, I guess your typical abduction story is like, I got taken out of my bedroom, brought into a craft, put on a table, and experimented on, right? That's a
Mhm.
story that we hear all the time, by many people. And that's if I was to say, right, if that was my experience, I would call it a negative one, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we have people saying that, no one's going to want to be you're automatically going to assume if someone comes into your house, they're not there for something good, right? Now, that is also going to cause if they're if they're here to teach us, then why are people feeling like they're being taken, right? Why do
Mhm.
people feel like, or is it different races of species? Are we dealing with different entities, malevolent, benevolent, that kind of stuff?
Yes, this is a very good point. I think the originally Dr. Tom Chaco, who kind of named or titled the book, wanted to make it more a sensational title because negative news sells. So this is,
Yeah,
I think, his original idea. But I think for the content of this book,
it's a good point,
it's a very
actually.
positive one, and I'm trying to figure out a way to rebrand it in a way to have it more attractive to the mass audience in the US.
Yeah. Tom,
Yes, sir.
you've heard stories of people having different experiences.
Oh yeah,
The CE5 crowd, right? They tend to be on the side that everything's more positive,
correct.
right?
Or love
And
and right.
that yes, but there's another faction that doesn't even talk about that. They won't even cross that line, right? The
Correct.
Jeremy Corbells, for instance, the
Absolutely.
George Knapps. Well, no, George Knapp does.
They mention it, but they don't go into broad detail. It's kind of like what Stephen Bassett was saying to us, where he
Kinda,
says, "Hey, they're
yeah.
not going to touch that yet. We have to start here." So they
Right.
don't really not waste their time with it, but they don't broach it yet because they're going in what they believe to be the order of operations, so to speak.
Right. So then, but then there's that faction that won't even talk about it, and then there's the other people like us that are kind of just stuck here, like, maybe just not enough information, right? So
Right.
what do you think?
Well,
I mean, could someone be impersonating? Like, is someone really going to that? Is our government? Dr. Greer would have you believe that the United States government is abducting people,
right.
and
That's
I
a
think
great point.
I think it's a fucking dangerous thing to say.
Well, it's unpopular. I believe it seems unpopular, at
You think
least
they'd be
in the
going to that
UFO
length?
community. Well, I wouldn't put it past them, but I will say this. Obviously, they're known as my labs, military abductions.
Is that a
From
real
what
thing?
I didn't think so. I'll be honest, but then I read a book by Nick Redfern called Final Events, and then a couple other books. And my conclusion, at least that I've drawn, this is where I'm at with it now, that it has happened. And the reason that the military was doing it is because they were actually at one point in time trying to get down to the bottom of the abduction phenomena itself. So it's like you have the military that's abducting people, but real abductions or contact experiences, however you would like to label it, they are both happening. But here's my problem personally with military abductions. What kind of technology or medication or chemicals do you need to dictate one's hallucination to such an extent that you can basically control the narrative of the story that they're experiencing? Like, for instance, if I say ingest LSD, chances are my environment, sounds, smells, all those auditory, all the sensory factors that are a part of a human body, that is going to have an effect on the way I experience an LSD trip. So how is it that the military would be able to abduct someone, give them some kind of chemical, and then convince them that they've been abducted by aliens and literally steer them the whole way through? That's why I have an issue with the whole My Lab thing. I lean in the direction of,
Ooh, like, is it a
regardless of My
psyop?
Labs existing or not, I do believe that someone other than humans has come down to this planet and has picked up human beings. Like, that has happened. Evidence is staggering when you really dig deep into it, and it would appear, based on the evidence, that it has been done by different groups with different agendas, malevolent, benevolent, and sometimes even cold and calculated and robotic, to the point where
Right.
there may not be any emotion behind it whatsoever, and they are just performing a task. And they don't look at it as, oh, this is harmless, or, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. They look at it as, this is what I
This is
was
a job.
tasked with doing. This, right, a job programmed. So it's just, so there has to be a little bit of like a mental leap here. If you believe in My Labs, then you also believe that some branch or faction of some military organization has the ability to give a human being a drug that, when they ingest it, you're able to steer what they're seeing and what they're believing to be real, which is in fact not real. So that's a stretch for me. I don't know what they have. I know the truth serum and all these different things that have been rumored to have been created by the CIA, the heart attack gun, all those things. But if My Labs have existed, I don't think they've been doing it consistently. I think maybe they've done it here and there, and God knows if they're still going on. But I believe that real contact has happened, but My Labs for me is very 50-50, honestly.
To respond to you regarding My Labs, it's actually pretty easy to do to cause hallucinations, cause this kind of very scary experience by using mind control. If you read the book Theory of Prophecy, you can see how the ETs did it to the author, just giving him a very incredible experience, just as if he actually experienced it.
Right.
He was told that it's actually very easy to do, just to take his astrophysical body out, because we have different bodies in addition to the physical body. We have our astral body, physiological body, fluid body, and it's very interesting to do and very easy to do to make that happen. I find that to be very credible because I happen to translate a different book called 334 Lies, written by the highest chair of the a secret society that was founded in Germany, the Illuminati. So it talks about how they were able to use mind control to influence the actions of politicians. So I find that to be very interesting because it's doable, and it's not very difficult to do once you learn the techniques to do that. It really doesn't require like specific drug. It's just using your mind power to cause a hallucination of the other party, as long as the other party is expecting something to happen. So I think everything is about knowledge. As long as you know how to do it, you're able to do that. Just like Jesus, he was able to perform all the miracles that seem to be extremely incredible to us, but he had the knowledge to do it. And it's true that he did everything as written in the Bible.
So why is that important to the Yuba prophecy?
Because
why is Jesus? I mean, is this should we be fundamentally looking at the stories in the Bible differently?
Yes, in a sense that we have to look at it more objectively. For me, I didn't believe anything written in the Bible until I read the book Theoba Prophecy. For a lot of Christians, like the fundamentalists and the evangelicals, they don't believe anything written in the book Theoba Prophecy, because Theoba Prophecy, this book, focuses more on spirituality rather than religion, because these two are extremely different. Jesus or Christ taught us spiritual lessons, spiritual knowledge, versus the religious leaders. They teach us doctrines, religious doctrines that are not necessarily consistent with the spiritual knowledge. And a lot of religious leaders, they do everything for their own benefit. I didn't know that the Catholic Church was the wealthiest church in the world. I didn't know until people tell me.
It's nice when you don't have to pay taxes.
I'm curious.
Save a lot of money.
Since we're talking about looking at the Bible from a different perspective, and this is something that I just learned about recently. This guy, you may know him, Ty. This guy Parallax on Twitter. He looks at the UFO phenomenon from a Christian perspective. But he and we DM a lot. We have a lot of stuff that we like to talk about. And he introduced me to this lecture series on YouTube that's tied to a book. It's by a gentleman named Timothy Alberino, and the book is called Birthright. And I don't necessarily agree with every point. I still don't have enough for me to say that, Christ is my savior. Again, I don't mean any offense to anybody, but again, I'm still looking for answers here. But he goes into the Bible and basically shows you right there, the book of Enoch, that, hey, we were not the only ones created, and we were not God's first creation. Like he talks about pre-Adamite culture. Like it is fascinating, and it really lines up with what you're saying. And I would highly recommend it. Even you don't have to be a Christian to listen to this and get something like really interesting out of it, because it kind of ties into advanced ancient cultures. And he literally shows you that angels are never described with wings in the Bible and in ancient texts. It's like advanced technology. It's definitely worth a look. Definitely, because he's talks about, the cherubim and all that, like you see these ancient Renaissance paintings and the beautiful angels and they have the wings. He's like, if you go in the Bible, he's like, angels don't have wings. They have tech. It's fascinating. Just so to him, angels are extraterrestrials. But when he says extraterrestrial, he really defines it well. Extraterrestrial means that their domain is not of the earth. But he also said that their origin could be outside the earth, but their place of residence could be the earth. Like they could have been born on another planet, but reside here in a parallel dimension of some kind, and vice versa. So it's it was mind blowing. It was
it
really
sounds
cool.
really fun.
Very interesting. I feel
So-
like I got to read this book that Samuel has obviously, worked hard to advertise, and then kind of make some connections between the two, because it sounds like there might be.
Especially when it explains why there's no record in the Bible of Jesus performing miracles before the age of 28, and why some people say that Jesus went to India, and why there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan.
Wow. I've never
Yeah.
heard that before.
Yeah, and so why? Again, I'm not super knowledgeable on those. So why did he not perform any miracles before 28? Because that's when he was resurrected, right?
Actually, what happens is that there
I don't
are actually two beings: one Jesus, one Christ. Jesus.
Oh yeah, that's now
Okay.
it sparked. I remember this again.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, go ahead, continue, because I find it
Yes.
fascinating.
Yeah, Jesus was indeed born out of Virgin Mary through an implant, through like an embryo implanted by the ETs into the uterus of Virgin Mary. Because when a person is born that way, he would have to pass through what the Nagas call the river of oblivion, forgetting all the knowledge that he learned in the past, forgetting his past lives. And so that's why, even though the young Jesus, born out of Virgin Mary, was extremely intelligent and smart and spiritual, he didn't have the knowledge to perform miracles. It's that Jesus who went to India and died in Japan. And people can still visit the Shingo Village, Japan, to visit the tomb of Jesus Christ. But that's the Jesus who couldn't perform miracles, who died in Japan at the age of 95. Christ, who was mentioned in the Bible, in the New Testament, who preached about spirituality and love, was indeed resurrected after 3 days after he was being put on the cross or nailed on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
His purpose was to show people that he was someone extraordinary, because even nowadays people wouldn't believe someone's preachings or teachings unless that person can show some miracles. We are really kind of skeptical about a lot of different things. So that's why that Christ, who was actually an ET from Theoba, who went into the body of Jesus made by the Theobans. So there's a duplicate body of Jesus, and that Theoban went into that duplicated body, and then just to show that he was someone to be believed. So his main purpose was to show people that they should follow the path of brotherly love and spirituality. And he died on the cross and resurrected 3 days after, just to show that there's life after death and there's reincarnation.
Right.
But the concept of reincarnation was removed by the Catholic Church. And this book is so specific. It named the 4 different church council meetings that intentionally distorted the original meanings of the ancient scriptures in the Bible. So this book is so specific and so interesting, and people can verify the information by looking up online and to see how the Japanese people view the tomb of Jesus Christ, and also the 4 different Catholic Church Council meetings. And I did a lot of research, and it's really interesting how they debated and came to the conclusion of certain things that people follow nowadays, especially.
Yeah, the Council of Nicaea, I believe, is the reason that Jesus is primarily depicted in like the Western world as being white. If I'm not mistaken, it was like they painted Christ in the image of some politician at that time, it was like his stepson or something who had beautiful long hair and a beard, and they're like, "Yeah, make Jesus look like him." Like,
so
it's like
we see our first case of influence, right?
Yeah.
So our first case study of influence over the media, the masses, right?
Council of
And-
Nicaea.
And just to give you one other detail in the book is that when Jesus was actually nailed on the cross, they didn't nail it by putting the nails in his palm. Not here. They put it on the wrist
Yep.
because the palm wouldn't be able to support his body weight,
Correct.
but the wrist did or does.
Yep. That they've looked at that. I'm real quickly. Are you aware of an ancient artifact called the Shroud of Turin?
Yes.
What do you believe about that? Do you believe that that was actually the burial cloth?
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious because they've done some
they've
fascinating
talked about
research on
that
that one.
Yeah, I've talked. I've seen a lot of discussion about that, if you will.
Yeah,
It makes
it's
sense.
hotly debated.
I mean, it's yeah, it is hotly debated. I'll just say that.
Well, I'll say that the one thing that I saw, which was wild, was that they did an analysis on the image that is on the cloth, and they're trying to figure out, well, how is it made? You know, dirt, blood, oils in the skin. And some scientist was like, the only way this image is getting here is that it's essentially like an ancient photograph. And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, the only way that this image is going to get here is if there's a blast of gamma radiation from underneath the cloth. And it's like, well, what does a blast of gamma radiation look like? It looks like light. So I think
Right.
resurrection, giant bright light coming from underneath the cloth. And I'm just like, okay, all right, I'm listening. You know, it's because I wasn't there. I can't
Yeah.
prove or disprove the resurrection. But when
It's
I hear that,
fascinating. I'll
when I
give it
hear
that.
that, I'm like, that's weird. And I've always wanted to know, like, people come and go through history and are forgotten. But for some reason, Jesus Christ has had this staying power that is pretty undeniable, right? Like, so the way I look at it is like, I don't know what happened, but something of significance must have happened for it to just carry through history like this. Whether it was, you know, ultra natural or miraculous is to be debated, but it does make me wonder. I do wonder.
Yeah, you either have to be a savior or a psycho, like Hitler, to be remembered.
Yes,
You know?
or you
So-
know, or you're a psycho savior.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
So-
those too.
With the Theuba prophecy, so clearly they do. I mean, clearly there's an influence, and there's something of significance with these stories about, you know, of our ancient culture. You know, I think we talked about this last time, but we discuss ancient cataclysm that, you know, kind of set the earth and its society back, right? Let's take the earth as an organism, right? And it was, you know, it got to a certain age, and then you know, we kind of got the reset button put on us. You know, do they talk about this at all?
Yes, exactly.
A great reset.
Yes, several times actually. So the first Great Reset actually came like about 1 million years ago. Originally, we all came from different planets. For example, the yellow people, the black people came from a planet called Brakratini. So they had advanced technologies, advanced civilizations, and they adapted to the environment of Earth. But then, as they established their civilizations in Australia and also Myanmar, they encountered what I would call natural disasters, like a small asteroid hit the Earth, split in 3 parts. One landed in what's now today's Red Sea, and one landed in East Timor, and the other in the Galapagos Islands. And that caused a lot of flood and also a lot of turmoil for the people on Earth. So that's the first Great Reset. But then after the Great Reset, people got together and the survivors came together and established like another kind of continuous civilization. The Caucasian people came from a different planet. They landed on the continent of Atlantis. At that time, about 250,000 years ago, there was another group of people who came from another planet called Arima X3. They landed on the continent of Lemuria. They brought a lot of ancient technologies, such as anti-gravitational technology, and to build the Great Pyramid. It's the Lemurians who pass on the technologies to some of the colonizers on Atlantis. So that's why a person named Thoth from Atlantis was able to build a Great Pyramid in Egypt about 17,000 years ago, in about 9 years' time. But then, about 14,500 years ago, because of a great earthquake, the continent of Lemuria sunk into the ocean. And the people in Lemuria didn't pass their technologies to the other people on Earth. So they kept their technologies or knowledge secret. So when a few hundred years or 1,000 years later, when the continent of Atlantis also sunk into the ocean, great technologies or knowledge was lost. So that's why we saw a great decay of civilization on Earth. And this is very detailed. This is detailed in the book Theoba Prophecy, and I would strongly suggest people who are interested in such topic of civilizations or ancient civilizations to take a look, because it matches certain accounts written by James Churchward, who wrote about the continent of Lemuria or Mu.
Yep.
And I think it's very interesting how things went.
Emerald tablets too.
Yes,
I'm sure you're aware of the Emerald tablet. The Emerald tablets of Thoth. That's definitely something you should read, Ty. That's a wild piece of text.
Interesting. So
Definitely.
I mean, there's a lot of connection here, and because and I bring it up because a lot of people think, and especially a lot of new people right now, they don't know that this UAP phenomena and this phenomena, it is not something that's new, nor is it even just 100 years. It's been since ever.
Yes.
Right. We are a it seems like the really what it boils down to, I guess, is, just like the United States, we're a country of immigrants. This planet might be a planet of immigrants, right? A lot of different people, a lot of different races, a lot of different beings, right? So could we be looking at a situation like that? And I think it's very simple, but again, they say this, the what is it? The most simple explanation. Occam's razor.
Occam's razor, yeah.
Right? This might actually be the most simple explanation.
Elizondo talked about it too. He has a quote from within the last few years where he said, he's had to question what the definition of being human means, and he says that he believes as this progresses, this disclosure, that our definition of human is going to change. That's a major tell right there if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, and definitely we human beings are all from different planets, including the Jewish people. And this book, Theoba Prophecy, explains why Jewish people are unique, in a sense.
Jewish?
Jewish. Why they were
specifically?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I should elaborate on that point, but I would suggest people to get a book and read it. It's very interesting how they explain everything.
I'll say you piqued my interest. I'm not Jewish, but I mean, it's interesting.
My aunt is. I should tell her to read the book.
I think there's so much. There's so many things and so much stuff that's packed in here that it's kind of wild to speculate that this would be something that someone's imagination, sparked. And what do you say to any naysayers that, because I can't imagine how many times you've been told this is all horseshit, right? Like, so how many times has someone said this never happened?
I mean, for me,
have you faced any detractors, like, people that really don't like this book?
I mean, I'm a very grounded person myself. I mean, I don't believe everything people just tell me or people just claimed in their imagination or channeled information. like I work with a lot of people from the court system, the attorneys and judges and plaintiffs, defendants, and doctors and business people. It's pretty hard for me to believe something like
I was gonna
this.
say you listen to people lie all day.
Yes, I do.
You literally all day in court, people lie.
Yes. But what's different is that this book contains so much specific verifiable information and so many details. It is impossible for a farmer or landscaper in Australia to have imagined everything written in this book in 1993 when he published it. I mean,
Right.
back then there was no internet. He never visited Japan in his entire life. He never traveled to Japan. How could he have known about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Japan? How
Huh.
could he have known about
That is
Germany
interesting.
was developing atomic bomb
Huh.
during World War II, and that the ETs prevented Germany from being the first country to develop or to deploy the bomb?
I don't
How?
even think about that, the
Yeah,
time difference, because it's not people do forget how, even 25 years ago, it just information wasn't like it is now, or it's at the drop of a dime, at the literal it's at your feet, your fingertips, the information of the world
At all times.
at all times. But again, in 1993, that was the year I was born. People, if you needed to know something, you had to go to the library and find a book, and encyclopedias. They were sets of encyclopedias. That's how people found information like that.
Yep.
So
You had to get books.
yeah. So you're absolutely. I didn't even think about. I always forget about that.
Yeah.
Wow, because there's so much detail.
1995 is like not even. You have to go a little further. 1998, I'd say, is probably like when UFO information was really starting to ramp up on the internet because I was searching for it. And this is before you had Google. I was like, you would have to download a search engine, and it was just a little box, an application you would run on your computer. You would type something in, and it would just spit out website results. You didn't really even get descriptions. You got the name of the website, like the
No,
the
I think that's
address, and
way
just a little
too.
bit,
That's way too early. 98.
No, 98. Yes, I was
I don't
I
know
was
about that.
using an early search engine in 98, 99, because in 99 specifically, I remember.
.coms didn't exist.
No, they did in 98,
No,
99.
dot-
Yes, they did, because I was searching the Y2K thing, like 98, 90. Dude, the internet started entering homes in like 94, 95, and I had the internet the year it
didn't
was
fucking get it.
available.
I didn't get that shit till
My parents invested
school?
in eBay stock when I was a kid,
middle school,
which helped
baby.
put me through college. And no, dude, seriously.
So yeah, well, regardless, information wasn't
yeah.
as it is now. So
No, it was much harder.
So you are right in that. I didn't even think about that. The amount of specific detail that is because there's a lot, like you said, the Germany thing, the temple in Japan. That's obscure knowledge. Someone who would have to be really embedded in the historic society to have accumulated all that information at that time. So that's a good point. And you said he was just a landscaper?
Yeah, he was a farmer, landscaper in Australia, and he didn't know how to use computer. He didn't know how to type at all. He wrote everything by hand. So it's a handwritten manuscript that he gave to a typist to type it out.
Wow.
That's really interesting to think about. I didn't know about this. And I didn't even listen. I got the internet. I didn't know about the Japan tomb. I had no idea. Never heard of that before.
So maybe go into a little bit more deep. So with Michael, it's Michael, right?
Michel Desmarquet, French.
Michel.
Yeah.
I always say Michael, and it's my American brain. So with Michel, did he ever go into any? Because you talked about the information that he told you that's not in this book.
Mhm.
I know we talked about it last time, but is there any plan to release said information?
I wrote an article giving as many clues or hints as possible, just to make it like a puzzle, because under the agreement that I had with Michel Desmarquet, I'm not to reveal the exact information, but he didn't say that I couldn't write an article about it and make it out of a puzzle. And that's what I did. In addition to that information, he revealed 2 other information that was not in the book, in which I can share because he revealed it publicly. One information is relates to the Sphinx of Egypt. He says that there are 3 chambers beneath the Sphinx. That when we are ready, the 3 chambers can be opened, and when that happens, everything will be revealed.
Huh.
So that's one information. And the other is regarding the grays, the little grays that the US government has been working with. He says that the grays did implant devices on people. By the year 1995, there were about 150 people or so had implants from the grays. But there is absolutely no need to worry about it because there's no harm or danger to the people having the implants. They did it because they were a dying race, or they are a dying race, because they have been losing their immune system. And they want to watch us and to see how we respond to the same situation, because we have had the same problem since 1948. So we have been losing our immune system since 1948. They want to see how we cope with the same situation so that they can learn from us. So they're also a dying race. I think we should help them, especially if they're
So,
harmed.
God damn, man.
Interesting.
So you said that the United States government is so. See, did Michel say that the Greys are in cahoots with the United States government?
I mean, he
They
didn't
got
say
some
that.
sort of deal that's struck.
I mean, he didn't say that, but he didn't say a lot of things. This is from my own research that I know that the U.S. government has been getting technologies from the Greys.
I was going to
exchange
say
with-
maybe a swap for information.
Yeah, it's like we pick up a few of our people if you drop off a few of your toys. Like,
yeah,
sounds like a deal to me, right?
yeah, and I guess if that
But
ever
the-
came out in mass, so in mass, like a wow, that was weird. Came out as true. What would the American people say about it?
Wouldn't be good.
I
I
mean,
don't think.
if you look at the technologies that we have drastically kind of developed over the last few decades, the fiber optics and the semiconductors and all the other things that we have seen so far, they're actually out of like we just developed in such a very short time that we shouldn't have developed a long time ago or in such a short time. I think we got it from elsewhere. I think it's logical and reasonable. It is something that makes sense. But on the other hand, Michel Desmarquet was told that the Greys also come from a Category 1 planet, and Earth is also a Category 1 planet. And the Thebans, the guys that Michel Desmarquet has interacted with, they come from a Category 9 planet. My take is that if you really want to learn something new, you learn from the best. You learn from the people from Category 9 planets. You don't learn from your peers or Category 1 planet inhabitants. I would suggest the US government to really focus on the masters of the universe. I mean, they have been guiding us throughout history as recorded in the Bible, such as the destruction of the 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, helping Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt, parting the Sea of Reeds and going to the desert. And
Sorry, a little technical issue.
I'm curious, just while we're discussing all of this, why do you believe that Michel didn't want you, like your personal view, why do you think he didn't want some of these pieces of information shared with everybody? Why do you think he would rather it be like a puzzle or kind of left in the dark?
The information that he gave me was very specific, and I think it has. I think it explains in the book for a lot of reasons. I would suggest you to focus on the timeline between Enoch and Noah.
Okay.
So Enoch was taken away by God, or by gods or Jehovah's.
Right, yeah.
And Michel Desmarquet, after reading the Book of Enoch, he was so surprised and shocked that the descriptions were so similar to what he actually experienced and encountered. So he suggests people to read the Book of Enoch. And remember, Enoch was instructed to write a book. So Michel Desmarquet was also instructed by the Theobans to write a book, or the Jehovahans to write a book. A few decades later, Noah was told to build an ark. So if you do the calculations, you're going to see like what the future lies. I would suggest people to really focus on what we just talked about in the very beginning of the show, just to wake up and to act in a concerted fashion to change our world, our future to a more spiritual path for the better. So I'm trying to change the course of the future. So I'm
That's
Big job.
It's a big task, brother.
That's a big job. Yeah, but you know what? Like you said, it can be done. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, before we wrap up, how does one so if someone watching was like, what does that mean? You keep telling me to change, you keep telling me to wake up. How do I do that? How does somebody wake up?
First, to gain knowledge. Knowledge is power. I strongly believe that. If you know how to cure cancer, if you know how to cure diabetes, if you have the knowledge, you're able to do that. And I think this book contains knowledge. Knowledge that's so vital, so important for the people, especially for future. And I strongly suggest people to read the book from cover to cover and to use your heart, use your intuition to really make your own judgment to see whether it rings true or not.
Right.
That's the key. And also, once you read the book several times, you know how to act, how to respond.
Right. So it's almost a text in itself, right? Like I don't want to say Bible because then we get into like calling it a religion and that's culty. But it's almost like a text that you can read, and it's like it's similar to asking the question, what's 1 + 1, and coming to your own conclusion that the answer is 2. So that the text allows you to ask the right question, and you come to that conclusion yourself. So, everyone, I could read the book and Tom could read the book and we could have different outcomes, different,
interpretations,
if you will, right? Yes, that was a good way to say it.
Yes. And I think one audience is asking about the pyramids made by the Egyptians or ETs. So to answer that question, the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built by the great wise man from Atlantis called Thoth in a 9-year period of time, using anti-gravitational technologies and then a technology called supersonic vibrational systems to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner, so that the Great Pyramid can be aligned perfectly, so that it can be used as a tool to capture cosmic energy and terrestrial energy, so that the pharaohs who knew how to use the Great Pyramid in the right way could communicate with people on other planets and to explore parallel universe and to make rain. So that's the Great Pyramid of Egypt. There was another pyramid that's 3 times as large on the continent of Lemuria. That was built by the Lemurians. But once the continent sunk into the ocean because of the earthquake, that pyramid disappeared or sunk into the ocean as well. So I think that's the reason, that's the answer given by the book.
Yeah.
So many connections there. Oh my gosh.
So many. And I think, that's going to be really fun. Hopefully, in our lifetime, we get to see some, whether it's Mars or somewhere like that, we find like another pyramid built somewhere.
There's pyramids on Mars. I
yeah.
believe,
So I
based on
think
what I've seen.
I think that could be a really cool revelation that would really, really, could the ET card also unite the planet in a way?
It has a chance.
Well, the answer is that they won't, because we have our own free will. So we decide our future. They don't intervene. They don't interfere unless they have to, unless we are in the state of decay, like the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, in which there's not a single good person in the two cities.
Right.
So, yeah,
Not
so-
even one.
not even one.
That's bad, man.
It's terrible.
Not even one.
Right, but we have at least like people like you who are good, so we are safe.
I think so. I think,
Yeah.
and that's what I like to think is
Try.
that most people on this planet are good people, right?
I'd
most
say the
people
majority
good.
are.
You know, we all have our flaws and we all have our, things that we're not so proud of. But I think if if you were to get, if Osiris was to weigh my feather, if you will, I think I'd come out on the other side.
Just like by this much.
Yeah, just by a hair.
Just by
But-
a hair.
But again, I still came out. So, and I think this is a good way to live your life is to take these lessons that people learn from religious texts, people learn on their own, whatever it is, their parents' teachings, grandparents' teachings, whatever. We take these morals like, don't kill people, right? Don't steal, these fundamentals. Like these kind of should be basic knowledge at this point.
Universal laws.
Universal laws. And I think if do we really need the government and how it all runs now? Is that something that is sustainable if the world is going to move on? It seems, because there's always, we talk about even the church, right? They take reincarnation out of the Bible. They pick and choose what they put out. It's our first example of controlling the masses in a way. Can an entity such as the church or the United States government, can they ever not be corrupt? Like, is there a version of the United States government that is not corrupt in some multiverse?
I think the answer actually is given in the book, in the sense that we can form another government, or maybe a government with a different structure that's not corrupt, but it requires discipline and also people's consciousness in a different level, like a higher level of consciousness in which no one takes advantage of another. And actually, Michel de Marquet was shown how great a civilization existed on the continent of Lemuria, in which there was no money at all in the market or in the society. People just took whatever they wanted from the market. And I think that's doable because it existed on Earth hundreds of like 17 or 14,000 years ago. It can exist in the future as well. It's doable, and it requires people's actions.
Yeah. So again, we're gonna have to go back to that. This barter system, almost in a way.
I think it could work. With
it
the right
could.
amount of resources.
Everyone working with everybody working towards the collective goal of keeping things free.
This isn't communism either. Like, let's
Yes.
be like really
Not
clear. This is
communism.
communism. You know what communism is? Communism is nice on paper and awful in practice, because it just ends up with the state having control over everything by lying to the people and telling them that they have the power. That's what communism is.
Right. Communism is a totalitarian regime, which is backward of civilization. What I'm describing is more like a communal society,
Right.
in which people share the same
resource,
goals and resources.
Right. If I was growing tomatoes in my backyard and someone came up to me and said, "My God, I'm hungry," it's like I would be happy to hand them that tomato. It's like you got to
Or-
get into that mindset, detached from the ego.
Yeah. Or it's like I fix houses. You have a farm, and you need your house worked on. Okay, well I need some food.
Fair trade.
So, I think that could be a system that works. But again, we talk about how greed corrupts, and every time money's involved, it seems that corruption is right behind it. I'm seeing this in my own family, right? My own, it's every time money is involved, just people get so greedy and so they'll stab their best friends in the back, and it's really scary how people act over something that's so, it's only given value by its the holder, right? So it scares me.
People who have near-death experiences never come back and say, I really regret that I didn't buy that property. I didn't take away that millions of dollars that was given to me. They always want to focus more on the relationship, on the more spiritual level,
Yeah.
on love. And
It's funny you say that, because literally the first episode of that Surviving Death show, the lady talks about how when she came back from her near-death experience, she struggled with materialism. Like she didn't care about anything. She didn't care about, but anything.
Happened to my great aunt.
Yeah. So
same thing.
Why is that? Is did she kind of move on to the next world and then get thrust back into this one?
And it's like, how good it is on the other side, and you realize this is not what you thought it was.
And most people after a near-death experience no longer fear death.
That's absolutely true.
I would say probably 100% of the time.
Nearly. My great aunt, I'll never forget this quote as long as I live. My mom told me about it. She had a near-death experience, and she literally said, "I can't wait to die again." Like, I know it's like wild to think about that, and it's almost like a weird version of saying something suicidal, almost, like it's in the eyes of some. But she said when she detached from her body and looked down at herself on that table, she said there are no words that could possibly describe what that was like, and she said it was the most beautiful thing ever.
I can only imagine that you stop seeing life as a start and a finish, right? That
Correct.
You're working towards of course, when we die in this realm, there's a start and a finish, just as in all things, as all things started.
It's like chapter 1.
There's a start to the universe. There'll be an end to it, and then another start and another end.
As far as we know.
With life, I think a lot of us see this life as a start and a finish, and we don't really know what happens after the finish. But these people seem to have gotten a peek behind the curtain, and they usually come back. I would say, actually, it's funny. I don't think I've ever talked to somebody who, or heard a story about a near-death experience where they didn't come back without that fear, right? I know I fear it.
I do too. Terribly so.
I love this. I love all this. I don't want it to leave me, and I don't want to leave it yet. And I think, I don't know. I guess that was a tangent, but you know what I mean. So I think
really got to get to the reincarnation episode, though, because I think that's where, if you have that fear, when you look at the evidence in that, like, you can't help but fear it a little less after watching that episode, because there's the coincidences. There's no way. Ty, I'm telling you, there's no way that these are coincidences. It's just,
which
the
I'm happy
math
about.
behind it is astronomical.
I've always liked the idea of reincarnation.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense from a scientific perspective. The recycling of energy. They taught us in school about energy, and I remember being little and being like, "Well, you're telling me that it doesn't get destroyed, so it's like it has to be transformed, right? So wouldn't it make sense that, like, if I die, all the electricity that's sending signals to my limbs from my brain, maybe that like represents my soul in like the physical, and then that energy transfers to perhaps another fetus? Like,
makes sense.
Kind of makes sense, right? Like,
yes,
it's really not hard to grasp either. It doesn't sound supernatural. It's scientifically explaining the supernatural.
Yeah, I agree. So with that being said, we're going to probably have to wrap up here, my gentlemen. But as I get through this book, I'm going to wait till probably the end this time. But when I finish it, hopefully within this week, I can then bring you on for a real breakdown of the story and just strictly go through it and talk about it point by point. Because it's so far, it's fascinating me. So the Thiuba Prophecy, can they get that on Amazon and anywhere books can be found?
Yes, they can get it on Amazon, and the audiobook will come out in about a few weeks or so.
Oh, cool.
Oh, so the audiobook, there's an audiobook version.
Yes, coming out in maybe 2 weeks or so.
I cannot wait to read this book. I'm actually looking forward to it.
So, okay, guys. So if you want to search the Thiuba Prophecy, get that book on Amazon. It's not a long read either. It's only 160 something pages. So this is not a book that's, it's not going to Harry Potter you where you need to be inside for a week to read it. I can't stand books like that. But
Like one.
as always, it's always a treat to have you here, Sam. And I think this needs to be told on a bigger, much grander scale. And I'm happy that we can play a part in that a little bit. And if they want to continue the conversation about the Thiuba Prophecy and the Golden Planet and this story of Michel Desmarquet, where can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook by searching Samuel Chong, which is my name, or on Google Thiuba Prophecy Samuel Chong. They can find my website, which is chinasona.org/Thiuba with the capital letter T.
All right, guys. And then Tom, where can they get you?
Right there on the screen there. That's my here. Let me make sure I'm going the right way. Right where my there we go. Right there where my thought is so hard to do when you're mirrored. Where my finger is right there. That's my Twitter handle, Atomic Thomas. I am Cortex Zero on YouTube, and I own a small digital design company called Zero Digital Designs at zerodigitaldesigns.com.
Federal citizens to reproduce. I'm just kidding.
I don't know why that was so funny.
I don't want Tom suing me.
Yeah, I tried to keep it short this time.
But I thank you for coming on, and we'll have you back, of course. And I can't wait to get through this book. And I highly recommend it to everybody. And with that being said, guys, keep your ear to the ground and your eye to the sky. All right, and we'll see you next time.
See you.